June 3rd is not an ordinary day. It never was, and it never will be. The ordinary is the cloak that hides the extraordinary from inattentive eyes. Like the wardrobe door that seemed only wood and hinges until it opened into a forest of snow and prophecy, this date waits for the one who dares to pause, to listen, and to see. The world around you will hum with routine. Clocks will tick as they always do. The streetlights will flicker on and off, just as yesterday and the day before. But something, if you are very still, will stir beneath it all. An echo not from memory, but from eternity. It is not that June 3rd was selected out of sentiment, nor that it bears weight because we declare it so. No, it has been appointed. That word matters. Appointment suggests intention, and where there is intention, there is intelligence. The architect of time has etched this moment into the stone of existence. The alarm is not set by you or by me, but by the one who spins stars into being and anchors the soul in flesh. His urgency is not like ours, scrambling, breathless, chaotic. His urgency is grave. It is silent thunder. When God says, "Open this," He means that something has reached its fullness, that a seed planted before you ever learned to speak has now cracked open in the soil. We often miss such things because we are rushing toward things that will not matter. The soul is not fed by frenzy. It grows in stillness. And yet stillness is not easy. It is not a natural posture for a world so enchanted with movement. But to be still is to trust. It is to become attentive, not passive. Like a soldier at the gate, not knowing the exact hour of the command, but knowing it will come. Stillness is readiness draped in silence. The command to be still is not a sentimental call to peace. It is an order. The very voice that once said, "Let there be light," speaks it. And like that first light, the stillness summoned today is meant to illuminate something hidden. The urgency of God is never without cause. He does not issue commands for decoration or drama. His words are instruments. When He says, "Open this," He means that something closed must now be revealed. Something in your life, your story, your mind, your spirit. Something has been sealed for a time. And now the seal must break. But do not expect fanfare. Divine moments do not always arrive with earthquake or trumpet. They come sometimes like the flicker of flame in the corner of your vision, or the line in a song that seems to strike too deeply to be coincidence. Sometimes they come in dreams you barely remember, or in the silence between your own thoughts. This is why stillness is essential. You cannot open a scroll if your hands are shaking with the noise of the world. June 3rd is not ordinary because God has called it otherwise. And when God calls, we do not get to argue the schedule. We get to obey or miss it. But if we are still, truly still, not merely frozen, then what is meant to open will open, and what has waited long and patiently on the other side of that door will step through. Not everything He asks us to open is outside of us. Sometimes it is the heart, the mind, the tightly wound grief or longing we dared not name. But when the order comes, it is not a suggestion. It is a summons to stand, to listen. June 3rd is not an ordinary day. That is not poetic exaggeration or sentimental indulgence. It is a fact, but a fact of the invisible sort, the kind that does not yield to microscopes or weather reports. Most days pass like breaths we forget we've taken, but some are charged not by our emotion or expectation, but by divine design. June 3rd is one such day. To the inattentive eye, it is simply another mark on a calendar, but to the heart that listens, this date hums with a different frequency. It bears the weight of appointment, not an appointment you have made, but one that has been made for you. We are not the authors of time, though we fill our days with deadlines and plans. There is an author who knows the story entire, who sets days in place like pages in a book, each one meaningful, though not each one explained. When he calls a day set apart, he does not explain why in advance. He asks for trust, and trust begins in stillness. The command to be still is not God's way of asking you to relax. It is His way of preparing you for revelation. There are things that can only be heard when the soul stops moving. There are truths too heavy for the noisy mind to carry. On June 3rd, stillness is not an option, it is the key. Without it, the door He orders opened will remain shut, not because He is withholding, but because we are too loud to hear the turning of the lock. There is urgency too, but not the kind we know, where everything becomes a blur and panic drives us forward. Divine urgency is different. It comes not from fear, but from fullness. The time has come, not because it is convenient, but because it is complete. The clock of heaven does not tick aimlessly. When God says, "Open this," it is because what has been hidden or held back must now be revealed. Something has reached its appointed hour. The fruit is ripe, the curtain must rise, and you, must be ready. Not in the way the world readies itself, with strategies and weapons and speeches, but in the quiet, trembling posture of obedience. You may wonder what it is that must be opened, but the mystery is part of the command. We are not always told what we will see when the door swings wide. We are only told to open it. That is the test of trust. To obey before knowing, to move before understanding. Sometimes what we are asked to open is outward, a conversation, a task, a mission. Sometimes it is inward, a wound we buried, a gift we ignored, a calling we feared. But always it is God who knows what waits on the other side. Stillness is the first act of courage, not silence of the mouth, but of the soul, a letting go of control, of the itch to fill the air with noise or the mind with answers. You must be still, not to delay, but to discern. On June 3rd, God does not merely suggest that you pause, He commands it, because He is about to speak in a way that cannot be heard above the din of daily life. There is something sacred here, and the sacred is never shouted. And when the moment comes, and it will, you will know it not by thunder or spectacle, but by the clarity that silence makes possible. A truth will rise, a door will give way, and you will understand why this day was never meant to be ordinary. It has been waiting for you, and now it is time. June 3rd is not an ordinary day. To say so is not to elevate it by emotion, but to recognize something quietly unshakable about it. There are days when the air is different, though the sky may look the same. There are moments woven into time that carry a weight, a purpose, a summons. This is one of them, and like many of God's moments, it does not announce itself with lightning. It waits to be seen by the one willing to stop and listen. The sacred is often subtle. It does not demand your attention, it invites it. That is why the call to be still comes first. Stillness is not absence. It is not silence for silence's sake. It is attention. It is the soul drawing breath and standing still enough to feel the tremble of something eternal moving underneath the present. Stillness is not idleness. It is an active posture. A soldier waits at his post, alert. A bride waits at the altar, heart pounding. A child waits for their name to be called, knowing something is about to begin. This kind of stillness is what God asks for now. June 3rd is not just a line on the calendar. It is a spiritual threshold, and thresholds are not meant to be rushed across. They are places to pause, to recognize that what lies before you is not like what lies behind. When God orders stillness, it is not because He is late. It is because you are early, and He is aligning you to the exact moment of His will. Stillness is the way you catch up to a God who is never hurried. And then comes the urgency, but again not the kind that leaves your hands shaking or your breath short. This urgency is different. It is the kind that whispers, "Now." It is the kind that has waited quietly in the wings and now steps on to the stage. God's timing is perfect because it is not ruled by chance. When He says, "Open this," it is not a suggestion. It is the unlocking of something appointed before time itself. Something has matured. A prayer, perhaps, sown years ago, has finally pushed through the soil. A promise, kept quiet and sealed, now asks to be revealed. This is not an emergency, it is a fulfillment. But how many of us will hear it? The world is loud, and its rhythm constant. You can miss divine instructions not because they are unclear, but because you are tuned to the wrong frequency. God does not raise His voice above our chaos, He lowers it beneath. And to hear it, you must lower yours too. That is why the stillness must come first, because the urgency of heaven is precise. When the order comes, "Open this," it must be obeyed at once, without delay, You do not need to know what waits on the other side. You need only to know that He said, "Open." Perhaps it is a door in your life you closed long ago, thinking it locked forever. Perhaps it is a calling you have kept in the dark, hoping time would erase it. Perhaps it is healing, long delayed, deeply feared, fiercely needed. God does not ask you to prepare everything. He only asks you to open what He has already prepared. The command is not to fix, not to understand, not even to complete, only to open. This is obedience in its purest form. The heart may tremble, but the hand must turn the handle, and the stillness must give way to movement. Not your movement, but His, now flowing through you. Today is not ordinary. It was never meant to be. God has drawn a circle around this day, this hour, this moment. And now He calls. Not with panic, not with pressure, but with purpose. Be still, be alert, be obedient, open what He orders. The appointed time is now. June 3rd is not an ordinary day, but that is not because something dramatic will appear in the sky, or because the world will visibly shift on its axis. No, the extraordinary rarely shows itself in the way we expect. It comes hidden, veiled in the cloth of the familiar. What marks this day as different is not what it looks like, but what it holds. God has circled this day. It is not one among many, it is one set apart, not for chaos, not for fanfare, but for revelation. And revelation, in the kingdom of God, always begins with a summons, a quiet, undeniable pull in the soul that says, "Be still." That command is not an intermission. It is the preparation for encounter. Stillness, in this sense, is sacred. It is not rest, though it may feel restful. It is not laziness, though the world may mistake it for inaction. Stillness is the state of readiness without self-effort. It is ceasing from your own striving in order to hear something greater. The soul cannot hear God's whisper if it is humming its own tune. To be still is to surrender control, not in weakness, but in trust. On June 3rd, this command is not abstract, it is not symbolic, it is specific. Be still now, because something is coming that cannot be received while you are in motion. What must arrive does not need your help, only your attention. God's timing does not match ours. His pace is not governed by our clocks or expectations. Yet when He calls something urgent, it is not because He is rushing, it is because the appointed time has come. Divine urgency is always perfectly timed. It does not flinch or waver. It speaks once, and those who are listening respond. That is the kind of urgency that surrounds this day. It is not crisis, it is culmination. Something has ripened, and the moment to open it is now. Not tomorrow, not later, now. When God orders something opened, He is not offering a suggestion. He is revealing that a window in time has been aligned with His will, and such windows do not stay open forever. The danger lies not in defiance, but in distraction. How many holy things have we missed because we were simply too busy, too noisy, too filled with our own plans? The stillness you are commanded to enter is not a delay. It is how your soul repositions itself to receive. The urgency is not anxious, it is precise. You do not need to understand the whole plan. You are not asked to predict or analyze. You are only asked to obey. And the obedience is simple, though not easy. Open this. Open your ears, your eyes, your heart. Open what you locked out of fear or fatigue. Open what God has been preparing long before this hour arrived. And you may find that what must be opened is not something external at all. Perhaps it is you. Perhaps June 3rd is the appointed time not for some event to unfold around you, but for something long dormant within you to awaken. A dream you buried because life was too heavy. A word spoken to you in a quiet moment, years ago, shelved because it seemed impossible. A part of your heart that shut tight after disappointment, never opened again. God knows where the locks are. And today, He holds the key. When He says, "Open this," He is not asking you to perform a miracle. He is asking you to trust Him enough to turn the handle. This day is not ordinary because God has made it holy, not because of what you do with it, but because of what He intends to do through it. But you must be still, you must listen, and above all, you must open. For this moment, prepared in love, ordered in wisdom, and spoken in power, is not just any day, it is the day the veil may lift, the day the door may move, the day something long hidden might be seen. June 3rd is not an ordinary day. It was never meant to be. You may wake up to the same ceiling, drink from the same cup, walk the same route, and hear the same voices. But if you were to step back, not with your body but with your spirit, you would sense the difference. Some days carry the fragrance of divine intention. They are not louder or brighter but weightier. June 3rd is such a day, not because we make it important, but because God has already done so. This is not a moment we have chosen, it is a moment that has chosen us. To recognize it, you must first quiet the noise that surrounds the soul. For what God ordains rarely arrives with spectacle, it arrives in stillness. Stillness is the first command, not because God needs silence, but because you do. In a world that teaches you to earn, to build, to defend, to explain, being still can feel like failure, but it is not. In the language of heaven, stillness is not passive, it is deeply active. It is the act of yielding to something greater, of ceasing your motion so you can perceive His. When God says, "Be still," He is not saying, "Do nothing." He is saying, "Do not," for what He is about to do does not require your strength, only your attention. Stillness is the soil in which trust is planted, and on this day, trust must take root. There is also urgency. Not a man-made panic, but a divine prompt. The kind of urgency that comes when something has reached its appointed hour. Not early, not late, just right. God's timing always operates beyond our awareness, but sometimes He lets us glimpse its precision. June 3rd is one of those times. He does not need to explain why it matters. He only needs to declare that it does. His word is enough. When He says, "Open this," He is not issuing a suggestion. He is delivering a summons. What was sealed is now ready. What was waiting must no longer wait. And if we hesitate, we may miss what was meant to arrive. But we are prone to missing, not out of rebellion, but out of noise. The world does not teach us how to notice sacred things. It teaches us to measure, to prove, to explain. But God does not always explain Himself before He acts. He asks for faith, not evidence, and this is where many falter, not because they do not believe, but because they want to understand before they obey. Yet the command is simple: open this, not once you see what's behind the door, not once you know how it ends. Just open. Trust does not need clarity, it needs courage. And what if the thing God asks you to open is not something around you, but something within you? What if the urgency of this moment is not about events, but about the unseen terrain of your heart? Perhaps it is time to open your ears again to the voice you've silenced, or your hands to the work you once loved but left, or your spirit to the healing you postponed for fear it would hurt. God knows where you are sealed. He also knows when it's time to unseal you. And He does not rush this. He waits until the moment is ripe. Then He speaks, not loudly, but unmistakably. Now. June 3rd is not an ordinary day because God has written something into it. Something that cannot be rescheduled or outsourced. Something that is yours to respond to. And so you must be still. You must discern the urgency not as pressure but as invitation. You must open what He has marked, whether it is a door, a decision, a memory, or your own soul. This day will not demand your attention, but it will offer a miracle to those who are listening.